By hour 3, many missiles had been flying from many platforms, coming in from sea-based battleships of all types and varieties and sizes, as well as the gigantic air armada of strategic heavy bombers coming in, both Chinese and Russian, in their squadrons of 8 apiece, as well as just swarms of fighters and fighter bombers coming in, many heading further south into key targets in California, Nevada, and a few in Colorado and Utah, but most remaining in the northwest to suppress all the air installations and missile silos and other key strategic points, as well as to aid the ground forces in their endeavors, as the Trojans had risen up in huge forces of 354,000 in different arrays of unit sizes, such as in Oregon you had the 8th Group Army and the 37th PAP Armored Division, not a light armored division, but a regular armored division of full main battle tanks and such, rising up along the I-5 corridor to suppress the guard units in this area and secure the entire flanks, the west and east of I-5, so that, and establish the logistics so that the externals could continue down to the end of their line unabated and meet with the other externals coming up from Mexico that would meet along the state line of Oregon and Northern California. The 8th Group Army did battle with the 82nd Squadron, which was a battalion-sized cavalry element, and also the 2nd Battalion of the 167th, or the 162nd Infantry Brigade, and also you had the 21st PAP Light Armored Brigade taking Boise and the Mountain Home Air Base immediately after hostilities began. And then sometime after that, in several hours, they departed for their new points, dividing up into their 8 battalions that comprised the brigade, 4 of which stayed to occupy Boise, and 2 traveled east and 2 more traveled north to help forces entering and already in Montana to suppress heavy civilian resistance in the mountains. By hour 12, the 2 battalions that had departed for the north had made it to their point, as well as to the east, where they secured a city along I-15 and did battle with civilians there until externals could come down and link up with them before continuing on just a little bit further to the state line with Utah and Nevada. And as we head north here, what happened was, in the north, as the externals made rapid progress in the western prong, forces made it just past Bellevue and Seattle into the northernmost suburbs of Tacoma, and by that time, the 9th Group Army and the 32nd PAP Infantry Brigade had already been not just laying siege to, but completely overrunning the Lewis McChord base, with air support coming in from a squadron of JH-7 ground attack fighter bombers, and also a squadron of J-11 fighters, which were on combat air patrol and ended up shooting down 2 American fighters that were in the air at the time of the grid and comms and military network down. And the electronic warfare regiment of the 9th Group Army made their flight exceedingly difficult as the avionics were messed with. Club Ks were continuing to fly, as were cruise missiles launched from sea and from land, as HM-2s and 3s were launched from Chi-Com bases in Canada inland, as well as Russian missile systems as well. Hypersonics were used mostly to hit key targets such as heavily fortified secure bunkers and the air installation bunkers and missile silos in Montana, which utterly crippled and annihilated them and just destroyed them into rubbled ruins to where they were no longer effective for any sort of use whatsoever, as they were totally gone and buried. Then, again, you had heavy air support in this area. By hour 6, the externals had made it just past the fighting that had occurred at the McChord-Lewis Air Force Base and Olympia and Tacoma, which were totally under the Trojan control, and they made it just south of there to this point by hour number 6. Also by hour 6, you had the externals in the middle of the western prong making it here, and you had the far eastern part of the western prong making it here to Fairchild Air Force Base, where they had assisted the Russian units in the area in totally finishing it off, as there was a heavy battle for the city and the base side of it, before the Russians made it down further to suppress this reserve base by hour number 9, after the Chi-Coms took control of this northeast corner. Now, you had the middle element of the western prong by hour 9 making it to Yakima and totally destroying the Yakima Reserve Base and the training center, which had already been heavily hit by air, by missiles, by artillery from the 9th Group Army, and was even being prepared to be attacked by the 9th Group Army, but by that time of the 9th hour they were told to hold off and allow the externals to handle it before they moved on further south to their final point of occupation in northeast Oregon, along with the 20th Group Army, which would proceed down in there to clear it of civilian resistance in the heavily forested areas of northeast Oregon. Now, you had similar going on here with the 49th Group Army. They were heavily in combat with civilian entities, armed civilian entities in the northernmost mountains and forests and few lakes of Coeur d'Alene here, and they had been fighting heavily here to secure their side of occupation in the state of Idaho, while the Chi-Com Eastern Prong had come in to Missoula area and relieved the 75th Militia Corps, which ended up heading for 3 different objectives. They went and finished off Malmstrom pretty early on before heading off to Silos. And by hour 3, at the time of their relief in hour 3, they had already made it down here to Helena and were in heavy combat with civilians, along with units of the 7th Group Army, which were also securing missile silos and destroying them and other installations, along with battling civilians. So you had the 75th Militia Corps and the 7th Group Army, a huge concentration of troops, basically annihilating our resistance in north-central Montana, while the middle elements of the external prongs, a huge force of some 5 group armies, headed south and broke off into a 2 and a 3 group army element respectively. You had 2 continuing further south that would link up with the battalions of this PAP brigade that went east, and they would continue just a little further south to the state line, as well as the element going into Wyoming here, going into about midway into the state, before linking up with externals coming from the south from Mexico at their final points of advance. Now, before they did that, there was a huge battle here with this aviation battalion of the 163rd. They ended up having to abandon their helos because of the electronic warfare interference and also the military networks being down from the cyber grid and the GPS as well from the anti-satellite weapons. They were totally ineffective as a unit, as an aviation unit. So they ended up having to fight on foot, and they lost badly. I will continue with another video.